Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Goda Gun. So Goda Gun is published in monthly Shonen Jump, written and drawn by Masanori Katakura. This is the same mangaka that did Kurohime, and crazy enough, this started while Kurohime was still going on, so this man was doing two mangas at the same time at a certain point. Started in 97, ended in 2003 with a total of 35 chapters. So let's dive right into this, man. The best way I can explain this manga is that this is the most fighting game series you'll ever find. Everything about this series screams fighting game. Our main character's name is Goda Gun, and his martial art focuses on the gun arts. And what he does is he isolates his blood vessels to harden his fists, and by doing so, it changes the color of his arms gray like a gun, and uses techniques inspired by guns. And then eventually we get our secondary protagonist, rival slash best friend of Gan's, and his name is Garrick Ryder, who uses kicks so fierce it creates sonic waves. And it's not only the names that are so fighting game influenced, it's their designs, it's the premise of the series. It's crazy. My biggest surprise after reading this is that there was no actual fighting game for this. And honestly, that's kind of a bummer because there is some cool stuff in here, and there are just characters that just scream archetypes from various fighting games out there. And my only downside with the story is the very comedic elements that pop up all over the place. So let's just get into the main premise real quick. Gan is causing trouble at his school, and his father, being a cop, says, you know what, enough is enough. I'm taking you to the school I went to when I was a kid. It's on an island, and it is called Ryoju High. The only way to get in is if you can beat the last person that came in. Gan wins easily, but then soon realizes that, oh no, there's actually tougher opponents out there than what he's been dealing with. When we saw him the first time, he whooped a whole gang of delinquents very easily and almost seems bored. But now that there are actual contenders at this school, life is brought back to his eyes and he's ready to come here. And of course, the other reason he wants to go to this school is because he meets one of the only female students there, whose name is Yuki, and she is a very standard character for this kind of series. She's a very innocent looking character, a little too cutesy in my opinion, but I think that's just what they kind of have to go for with Gan's character, right? Because he has so much style and suave that that's a good balance for him, I guess. You know, the surprise there is that she is actually the student body president because she is the strongest at the school at the time, at least for freshmen. Eventually, I guess just sophomores, because there's no seniors from what I understood. And then eventually Gan gets into conflict with Garrick Ryder because he is also a recent transfer student, and his goal is to be number one for the freshmen and to date Yuki. And Gan, being obsessed with Yuki, love at first sight situation, he's like, oh no, that's not happening. They get into a fight. And then it gets revealed that Garrick Ryder is actually here in an undercover mission because he works for this shadow army called the Hang Cross Army. And their goal is to take over the school. Eventually they show up and they just declare war on the school. And that is pretty much the basic premise of this manga, is that they're focusing on training and waiting for the arrival of this army that they're going to have to face. Pretty short, if I would have to say. Even though it was 35 chapters, there was still a lot to read because it was monthly. We're hitting 40, 50 pages. And it's not like they're scarce on the dialogue. And I think that's another reason why I'm like, wow, this is just a fighting game, because we already have the story. It's clear cut. We're not going to waste time dealing with other stuff going on. And I gotta say, it's a fun time for the most part. The highlight of this is the uniqueness of everybody, especially Gan with the gun martial arts. And the art style. It's so crisp and fierce. It's great. And it's funny because when I was reading this, I was thinking, yeah, this art kind of looks familiar. Like, who did this manga? I looked it up, like, oh, it makes so much sense because in Kurohime, she uses gun magic. She uses her guns filled with magic to create her circles to do spells and stuff. And here we have Gan isolating his blood and is mimicking guns with his fighting style. I was like, okay, clearly this guy has a taste. I'm really enjoying it just because it's unique. And at first, it was kind of, man, this is very basic stuff because Gan was just using the same move over and over again. And it looks great, right? When we get the two spread of him doing a combo, you're like, oh, I could totally see this being an EX move. But it was very limited. And then after training arc that happened. Now we see him doing actual other stuff to mimic other guns. I like the explanation. In a sense, it's like, oh, he forgot how to do those because he was so confident using just his signature move over and over again because it was always a for sure win in the normal world. And then once we get some of that stuff, the fights, crisp with everybody. Eventually we go into like sort of like this tournament arc between the best fighters from the Hang-Crossed army and from the high school, and we get to see some cool stuff there. And then it just gets so absurd in what's going on. Like the main antagonist, just the way he has powers and how they're used, it's just a fun time, honestly. Like if you love the ridiculousness of fighting games, then you're gonna have a good time with the fights in here. And again, just my biggest disappointment is the comedy, because it's so over the top, and you'll know it's there because the characters become chibi. And it's almost surprising because sure, Kurohime had some of that stuff, but it wasn't in your face all the time. And on my end, I wasn't a big fan. Every time I saw it pop up, I kind of skipped it because it's really nothing important to what's going on in the story. But yeah, again, solid fights. Characters are great. It's just fighting games. So what more could you ask for, really? So I would say, yeah, give it a couple chapters. Check it out. If you like what you see, that's pretty much what you're going to get for the most part. So you could just go ahead and go straight through and have a fun time. And that's all I really have to say today about this series, guys. So thank you for listening. Have you seen it before? What were your thoughts? I'm not going to lie. I'm also surprised that there wouldn't be an anime for this. I think this is a good setting for one. And if not, there should have been a fighting game. Kurohime didn't have an anime, but it was able to get a game on the PS2. I did not see anything for Goda Gun, which kind of sucks because it's literally there. It's like, hey, they were making a bunch of fighting games for manga, especially from Jump during that time. Let's get this series, but it didn't happen. So that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. But yeah, what were your thoughts? Go ahead and send us an email, unversepodcast@gmail.com. If you have any other questions or comments, of course, we'll bring those up on future episodes. And then you can follow us on social media at unversepodcast anywhere you go, and we'll let you know when those episodes drop. So thank you guys, and we will catch you on the next one.